Good morning, all. We are presenting a roundup for new confederation of MSEs and multi-sector. As you all know, we are going to start with I'll present three people that are presiding the table. First, José Luis Roca, the president of CONPYMES. On his left, on your right, Mr. Antonio Cañete, who's the vice president and also president of PYMEC. And on the right, on your left, Maria José Landaburu, vice president of CONPYMES and general secretary of WITAI. And I will ask you, please, in the same order, to say hello to all of you, and then we will start the meeting. Thank you, Juan Manuel. I will make a quick thank you to all of you, both those present and those virtually present in this meeting. We will be very brief. I will not let the introduction to any of you. I will make a brief presentation myself, and then we are ready for you to give us your questions. CONPYMES is employers association which has recently been registered in the ministry, but we have been working since 2016, a series of organizations of SMEs. We have been working on these things, which is the main point of our organization. We had 2 years of meetings. In 2018, we started a platform called PYMES, which did not have a character of an association of employers. Then in 2020, we have kept working through the pandemic until we created CONPYMES. What is special about CONPYMES? Because in the world and in Spain, there are other employers associations of pymes and self-employed people. When we started this project in 2016, we decided we should defend a different production model. The present in all advanced economies in Europe and in the US, and then was classical capitalism was finished, and important organizations such as FME and OECD are certifying this. The central bank, it was not only our own idea, but we wanted to know what other economic model we wanted to create. Of course, we are employers, and as employers, we try to find profits, but we are capitalists, and we fight positions that may be against capitalism. But we thought this model would be finished, and we reached the conclusion that we need a growth sustainable model, more inclusive, with equal opportunity among companies, because a large part of the world is within large corporations where small companies cannot compete, and that 50% of the world production makes it all advanced economies as low production, and economies based on a monetary policy of low interest and expansion of balance, which is created zombie companies. In that defense of competition, we thought that the best representation of the defense of competition, which is the base of all free markets, is the SMEs. Same opportunities against oligopolies of large production, so that distribution of wealth in the whole country should not be only through transfers and taxes, but to have a fair production of prices, so the companies and society would benefit through competition, so we could reach that objective. This goal is very aggressive. It's not easy to reach. It's not a process requiring only the presence or the act of a Spanish organization, but it must extend to Europe, the European Union. And through that model, we believed that the first guarantors of that was SMEs and self-employed. And from there, we started our project which I believe that is our differential fact. From now, these are philosophical matters, but our companies, the SMEs and the self-employed, require truths and new realities based on this economic model, which is the wire that runs through our proposals and makes us different from other organizations of SMEs and self-employed in Europe and the rest of the world, because we are looking for this kind of inclusive capitalism. What is the economic model we are fighting for? I believe that is the center of our goal as an organization. And now, in the questions, we can go down to what our SMEs and self-employed can want at this time, which is very complicated from the public health point of view, and that complexity has not changed, and the pandemic has complicated these problems even more that SMEs in Spain and throughout Europe had on our desk. And this principle, this philosophic principle, we have to try to help our SMEs translating it into actual facts. And we hope we will be able to explain to you. So please, we are prepared to listen to your questions. Good morning, all, and thank you for your being here or following us, because you are our loudspeaker to tell society and our institutions and governments what we are presenting today by presenting the Spanish Confederation or the National Confederation of SMEs in Spain. I think it's worth stating that the presentation we are doing today of this confederation, we are giving a voice and a representation to 99.8% of our companies, which produce more than 70% of employment and also 60% of the gross produce. The motor of our economy has been SMEs, the chance of having their own voice to defend their interests and to represent them. Therefore, what we have created, all these organizations, the sector organization and territorial in all Spain, is to be able to channel this voice, to be represented and defended. This organization is not against anyone. It's to represent all. And in this sense, it's most of our economic weave. SMEs having no voice or participation or notoriety in this and defending their interests is an anomaly in our economy, which we must correct. And also we need to equalize our employers with the rest of Europe. All countries in the European Union and the European Union itself have employment organizations of large companies and small companies which are separate. And that's a question in which we, with the representation of SMEs and the participation also of self-employed, we want to have a voice, an authorized voice that be able to bear this representation. As the President said, in the questions we will be able to explain in more detail our objectives, our aims, and the problems that these SMEs and self-employed have in our country. Of course, I want to thank us, my friends, for waiting and being here, and any problems you may have had, and only want to point a couple of clear ideas. I am Secretary General of an organization of self-employed, and we are aiming at the smallest of the companies. Of course, we are proud of that. We generate quality, talent, effort. During pandemic, that was very clear. But also, we are small, and that makes us proud, because our small thing creates our streets, our main streets, our towns, and the essence of our country. And yet, in my opinion, our constitutional right and our constitutional obligation of being represented in a dialogue where public policies are agreed, where the model of country is projected, we have not been sufficiently represented. And that's easy to explain. Obviously, a same organization cannot defend Uber and a taxi, or Amazon and a cycle. We know what we need. I feel quite comfortable in this very plural organization where all sensibilities fit, where all territorial expressions fit, all sectors fit, with the same voice, the same opinion, and the same importance. And lastly, there's one thing I would really like to represent here. From CONPYMES, we not only defend partial interests, we only want to defend SMEs or self-employed to produce better position for them. We feel we are part of a society, of a political and economic scenario, and we want to contribute and use our responsibility to contribute. There will be no transition of ecology or technology or quality employment or participation of women in companies as long as we are not there to defend and represent it. Thank you. Vice President, President, let's start the questions in this press conference. We will do as follows. First, because all the newsmen that have been arrived here, we will start with you. You raise your hand and I will give you the chair so you can, the floor, so you must say your name, the media you and who you want to ask. The same order will follow again when you have finished of asking questions. We will let the reading through the chat, the Zoom chat, of all newsmen that are following the press conference through your homes. Again, we'll ask you your name, the medium you are representing, and the person you want to ask, and then I will read the question itself. So, the President tells us, of course, we started late, as you can see. We have until 15 or 20 past for this question and answer, and then the ask for say. So, whoever is here wants to ask a question, we are ready. Please. Please. Okay, there is a microphone, so please use it. Otherwise, the translator cannot hear you. Joseph Cabineros, TV3, I want to ask, Mr. Cañete, as you are part of my territory, you said that you're not fighting anyone, but the constitution of this confederation has created problems with the large employer associations. Why do you think they are worried? And you also said we are going to separate SMEs, and also the Vice President. How's that going to end? What's your final goal? That presence in what places, in what bodies? I'll say one thing. Our final goal is to be an instrument to solve the hard problems of SMEs and self-employed in Spain and Europe. This is our will, our aim, and our need to be useful and to work. But going down to the ground, however much has been written these days, CONPYMES is not fighting anyone or against anyone. It comes to fill a democratic participation area for representation, and that's very important for us because it's one of our goals, to place SMEs and self-employed in the bridge, in the steering wheel where representation and defense happens. In our country, SMEs, which are 99.8%, have not our own voice in having the chance of defending their interest is an anomaly in the area of representation, maybe because in these SMEs we have not used our representation, and therefore in many places we have been used for other types of interests, and sometimes against us. So a clear goal is to place SMEs and self-employed in the steering wheel where the social dialogue happens. Also, we want to make a call to all association world, the companies, and to participate. If self-employed and our society does not participate in the representation, and we don't fill that space, then the representation or defense will be different from that of SMEs and self-employed. One other question for us, which is very important, is to be able to translate to our governments and to our representatives, our political representatives, that legislation must be made thinking in small size to be able to make this country great. Not segmenting laws, but have the same law for a 1,000 or a 20-room hotel makes this country less competitive, and the size of our companies is smaller. So we are not presenting CONPYMES against anyone. If there's anyone that feels attacked by the configuration of CONPYMES, of course, there is an organization that represents all companies in Spain, and that vertical organization has in the same organization different segments of representation. What we want, and it's an example so you understand, when you have El Corte Inglés and a small corner shop in the same organization, you can be sure and prove that the decisions and the proposals made will not come from the small corner shop. So we don't go against anyone. We want that micro become small, that small become medium, and medium become large. That our organization comes to make those that create wealth and employment, which is self-employed and SMEs, have the conditions to make this country more competitive and large. I would also want to say one thing. You will think, yes, of course, there are some organization that already represents SMEs, but there's a key question here is that representativity cannot be given. Representativity must be won. People give it to you from below, from the grassroots. The SMEs, the self-employed give it, and they must back you and vote. That's what legitimacy is about in democratic countries, and that is what social dialogue can talk with the representative of the people. And that's the main difference between others and ourselves, that we want to democratize the process of representativity in this country. So they and all of us will be there if sometime people decide it. And if they don't decide it, then others will be able to do it. And to finish, as Maria Jose said, we have plurality, and that enriches us, the various points of view. I insist, we defend a production model which is very clear, which we call inclusive capitalism, and our presentation today will be CONPYMES, a new association for SMEs and self-employed in the frame of European capitalism. And that model requires equal opportunities, lead competition in a section of the country economy, and in that area sometimes we want to chase the messenger, but not. Many financial international organisms has remained in the theoretical plan. I think we believe that that model of capitalism is waste is finished, and in that competition the best actors that warranty that open of competition to other sectors that have been outside are SMEs and self-employed, for equal opportunities and fair share of prices, so companies and consumers are going to benefit. Luis Merino from Renewable Energy magazine. If there is a sector where the large companies and oligopolies have done things as they wish, and that's recognized by even some ex-ministers, is in the energy sector. I would like to know what CONPYMES can produce, can help in this area. The energy model, we have an organization of photovoltaic energy, and that's very, and we are wondering how these auctions of power are being given, and the scale economy is not happening. That's the model is on large scale in the rest of Europe, and these auctions are not favoring having small photovoltaic fields. They are favoring that many of these offers are made by international funds that favoring sometimes by expansive central bank monetary policy. It's a very good question. It happens in many fields of the world economies, not only in Spain, where there is no competition and where dominant positions in monopolies. We, as an organization of SMEs, have nothing against the large companies. Large companies competing and have no dominant position, and reach the market and generate productivity and contribute to general interests. The problem is that small part of the SMEs that are out of competition. What we cannot pay is when we segment the cost of energy. Our SMEs pay more than 20% expensive energy in Portugal and France, for example. Any more questions from newsmen here? We have 5 minutes or more to finish this press conference. Gloria Prado from TV, Spanish TV. It's a very intense time of social dialogue, fighting pandemic, and start recovery. At what time are you planning to become part of these discussions in matters such as the temporary unemployment? What is your position? We'll let Maria Jose speak about hope. I believe it's very difficult to avoid that an organization with this representation sooner than later will be part of the discussion process. We are doing it already in other areas, but we want to be at the core of social dialogue, which is what we believe belongs to us. We hope it will be like that soon. In regard to the extension of the temporary unemployment, they must be extended. The companies must, and self-employed and workers, laborers must be attended, and that must be done immediately. And in regard to self-employed, we are discussing that with the Minister of the Social Security. We are hoping to be called for a negotiation to work together and to have the agreement of rebuilding that created a certain solidarity model, a protective model, and that's what we're working on. I must say, capacity of participation we have immediately. Representation for that too, we also have it. If we don't do it and it's not done, we should ask what is happening in our country, that an organization that represents what CONPYMES represents and is needed for this social dialogue and this transformation in which we're going to live is not present. There must be some anomaly. As the Vice President said, there are already organizations that have certified their representation and their participation. As a president of EPIMEC in Catalonia, we have a registered employers map, in which there is no problem accepted by Europe. So nobody must become nervous. This is nothing different from what is happening already, and we have the capacity and the representativity to do it. And the importance of being able to supply important parts and proposals for SMEs and self-employed. Thank you, Vice President. President, following the protocol and our agenda of the 2 acts we had this morning, we finish now this press conference. We have many questions here sent from the other side. They will all have answer both in the act that will happen now. There are too many questions, and I don't think I can read them all. I'm saying because of the timetable, but they will all be replied. They will all have answers. Syndicates are legitimated on companies by voting and labor union selections. We don't know what is the backing of the presence of the other 2 organizations, because they have never have any recognition. So we are open if you want to present certificates to know who we are. If we want to have us voting, we will be happy. The Statute of Worker talks about a representation at the state level by the organizations there are. It could be notoriety and then participation to CONPYMES, but also there's a percentage of participation. But in our democracy, and after 40 years, no mechanism has been created where that measure will have that condition. So the regulation, what we have certified at present, organizations that are on CONPYMES, with all transport in Spain, with all the primary sector, transport with Huachai in the self-employed, Pyme Baleares, Mallorca, Menorca, that have artificial certifications, and EPIMEC, which represents all the companies in the sector, is much more than enough to have the minimum that should be for participation. If CONPYMES have no participation as soon as possible, it says we will be against a democratic anomaly of participation in such an important area as the financial and company sector in this country, with 99.8% of companies, which are the motor of our economy. Thank you. As I said, in the presentation act, many of your questions will probably both those that are here, but those that are in the Zoom session may have answers, but any questions that have appeared in the chat will be all answered. Thank you all.
Hola. ¿Puedes pedir, por favor, que abran el micrófono? Muy buenos días. Por favor, si pueden ir tomando asiento, vamos a comenzar. Gracias. Por favor, pueden ir tomando asiento. A ver, por favor, un poco de silencio que vamos a comenzar. Gracias. Los compañeros de prensa, por favor. Si les dices, por favor, a los que están ahí en el fondo, por favor, por favor. Perdóname, es que tienes que ir, por favor. Por favor, vamos a comenzar. Si podéis guardar un poco de silencio, que vamos a comenzar. Muchísimas gracias. ¿Por ahí se pueden sentar, por favor? Gracias. Muy buenos.
Good morning. Welcome to the Arab House, and thank you for being with us in this day where the Spanish Confederation called CONPYMES, which is the Confederation of SMEs and Self-Employed.
Bajo el
Under the umbrella of CONPYMES, there are more than 30 organizations of SMEs and self-employed in different sectors of our economy, which will today speak here, take the floor, so we learn more about their aims. And I give the floor to the president of CONPYMES, Mr. Castillo. Thank you. I will try to be very brief. not taking more than 7 minutes. First, let's start welcoming and thanking the presence of the third Vice President, who told us that because of agenda, she will have to leave after her intervention, but we want to thank her for being here with us. Also, the representative of political parties, the director of the professor who will, of the university, members of CONPYMES, and the virtual attendants, the conductor, Arab House and his director for having us in this magnificent building, the staff of CONPYMES who made a strong effort to organize this act with José Manuel de Palos and Sala Manuel, and Giuseppe González, which we will give him a small homage for his many years in President of Honor in making CONPYMES. I want also to not forget the time we are and remember all these victims of the pandemic and their families and friends, those who are still with long COVID in hospitals and other pathologies, not only in Spain, but also in Europe and the world. It's fair to remember them. Also, many of you may not know it, but I want to remember Manuel Arribas, a friend of us in Huatay, who contributed to the creation of Plataforma Pymes and who passed away, unfortunately, and I always remember him. And so we always try to bring him to mind. I come to talk about my book, which is CONPYMES, a new employers association for SMEs and self-employed, now with the European inclusive capitalism. We are a fluid organization, we have different sections, and I want to explain what makes us different from other SME and self-employed organizations in Spain and Europe. First, I can't forget the economic fixture in which we find ourselves since 2007. We have a strong financial crisis due to low productivity and high indebtedness that caused, in 2014, monetary policy was the only that acted with expansion of balance and low financial interests, and that has created inflation. And then this pandemic came by. We never thought, employers always think of risk, but we never thought we would have to think of risks of public health. And now, at this time, the Eurozone is in a recession with an inflation which is running amok and causing many of our SMEs and self-employed are having very hard times, real problems. And those that once we intend to be an instrument to solve. In Spain has important complications because it still has pending recapitalization of a financial system, which created the bad bank, and that the financial capacity of Spain, the balance of capital and accounting keeps us in the market is standard in industry and agriculture, the two industries that produce a capacity of financing. The same with all that affects essentially there's a big trouble in time. Social disorders are happening in all the world, and we as an organization, and that's our uniqueness, is that we try to defend a model, an economic model which is different. We call inclusive capitalism, of which I will talk later. I want to give some data. What are SMEs? They're small and medium enterprise. They're 1,293,000. Large companies are 14,000. We have nothing against large companies. In fact, large companies that compete and not have that are not oligopolies or not monopolies, and we accept them because they increase the productivity of the economy and increase growth. And that's something that sometimes small and big companies are not competing. Those that act without they will make more than 40 million, but they compete like everybody else, and that is acceptable. I give some more data. Large companies are 14,000, and in Spain, of that 1,290,000 that are small, micro and small, and that's about 2% are medium. Among all of them, they employ 8 million, and there are 60% of employment apart from public employment. We try to better the data of the economy of these companies, our SMEs, particularly micro ones and small ones, which are about 60%, 600,000 that pay company tax. They are 60% are having negative basis. Many have a ROE, which is half of the big companies. With the productive model we defend, with inclusive capitalism, we try that ROE and ROA of our small companies get better. It will contribute to productivity and to a better distribution of wealth, which I will talk about later. What is CONPYMES? Well, I'm going fast to not overrun my time, which is important. What is CONPYMES? I understand that what we're creating was born in 2016 with employer organizations that met informally with debates and stories. We created SME platform at the end of 2019, and in the middle of pandemic, we decided that in an unthinkable situation in society and public health, it was the time to create CONPYMES. What is different? What makes us different? When we're talking of SMEs organization, well, we defend SMEs and self-employed well. And as Maria Jose said before in the press conference, we decided we should go one step further and defend common interests. Not only us, but the FME says so, and the central bank. Financial Times said it recently. The capitalist neoclassical model of started in the Second World War is finished. We have been 50 years playing with a player, and we have to start playing with different players. We may not have the possession of truth, but we call it inclusive capitalism. But many international organizations believe this, but we must now come down to ground and defend it. We must give something to our companies, which is not easy. This inclusive capitalism is that we must have equal opportunities in the companies. There cannot be dominant positions. No, 50% of the gross domestic product is in domestic and oligopolies and monopolies, which has created a financial of economy, excessive indebtedness. We have to open competition, that space of the gross domestic product in the world, which is not open to competition. Of course, SMEs will have to be self-critical, because from 2007, the economy is such, we must have some responsibility. And SMEs and self-employed will have to work to reach that 50% of the GDP that is not reachable by us. We believe, at least we will try it, that productivity will be better, growth will be better, and that will raise the life level of course, we want to obtain profits. That's the essence of our activity, but to obtain profits with a fair distribution, which will happen by a fair price construction and not via taxes. The current neoclassical capitalism has realized that, and they are trying to obtain different alternatives, maybe to keep the same without changing anything. And we want to find this inclusive capitalism. And I'll finish with this. One is Europe. At this time, Europe has opened, institutions have opened a conference for the future of Europe. It has not been reflected in the media in Europe, but it's a process that is a constitutional reform. And we in that conference, have proposed the possibility of changing the productive model towards inclusive capitalism. In regard to the pandemic, we cannot forget that we are in that context of pandemic, and obviously all strategies are going toward the World Health Organization, testing, therapeutics, what is essential and what is not. We have claimed help, economic help, financial help for non-essential activities, which have been mostly SMEs, where the essential ones have been the larger companies. So help is needed, aid is needed for SMEs. And maybe we have to go farther than that. And to finish, this we have to bring down to the grass, to the day-to-day of our companies which are having big difficulties. My colleagues will let you know later, but I think they will explain this philosophy that I've explained here. Our companies, I want actual truths. We have created a guide wire to define different policies that my colleagues will explain to you. But the problem that we have at this time with the productive model is we are not against capitalism. We are capitalists, of course. We are employers, and we want profits, not only in Spain, but it's in all advanced economies. And that's why our project wants to be not only national, but going farther and try to influence Europe to the as far as we can. So I have tried to keep in time. Thank you.
Bueno,
Thank you. CONPYMES, as we have been telling, is inscribed in the registration of company organizations in the Ministry of Labor. And today we have here in this presentation the third Vice President and Minister of Labor and Social Economy, Yolanda Diaz.
Buenas tardes ya a todos y a todas ustedes. Un placer saludarles.
It's a pleasure to say hello to you, Maria Jose, the President that has just talked to us, my dear Valeriano, and all the persons that are here. And please, I want to greet the representatives of the parliamentary groups that are here and that make possible to create a democratic company, a society which is much stronger, which at a time of such economic crisis and social crisis, you are key to find the measures that from here on we may have to weave among all of us. Thanks to all of you for your presence here. There's a word that I will say in Galician that I've always loved especially. It belongs to the seafaring people, and this is charabal. A charabal is, in other Galician word, un cardumen, or the same, a bank of fishes, a fish bank. But charabal has peculiar characteristics, and I will read the definition. Charabal, small bank of fishes that compresses in the presence of a danger. Sometimes I have seen on this charabal the metaphor of a productive weave in our country, integrated mostly by medium and small enterprises, companies, and also by self-employed that get together and weave alliances against the bad weather, the tides, and the big predators at sea. I reminded the importance of small things against the large gestures, the importance of walking together in the things that we are worried about day to day. And I want to congratulate first for the constitution CONPYMES, this new confederation sustained on organizations with a long tradition of association, talent, innovation, and sustainability, the capacity of suggesting territory, cohesion, and social are big things of greatly transcendent, and sometimes they are based on small gestures in alliance, or day-to-day alliance, small projects such as the ones that we are presenting today. As we have been able to prove, our government is fighting for SMEs and self-employed as agents of change, and many things are going to change in this country, and in this change we cannot forget how much you provide to the economy and employment. This has been enhanced during the pandemic, the special contributions to the thousands of self-employed that have been compelled to close or reduce drastically their activity. Also financial aid through the institutions. For the first time in the history of our democracy, more than 1.5 million people of self-employed and have had the chance of obtaining unemployment benefits. And you know, as I know, that that benefit probably needs to be better, because it was created at the time before the pandemic with features that make it difficult. The access makes it difficult in the usual life of the self-employed. But it's fair to recognize that never before 1.5 million self-employed have been protected by a small but aid, and also in their taxes, which gave them some help during the pandemic. The key role of SMEs is in the transformation and resilience, which we have sent to the European Commission, and which fits perfectly with the modernization policy and digitalization of the ecosystem of our companies. As you know, SMEs, small and medium enterprises, have a basic role in the economy of the Union. As is explained in the strategy of SMEs of a digital Europe, more than 99% of companies in the European Union are SMEs, which employ about 100 million people and generate more than 50% of the gross domestic product of the Union. That key role by giving an advance in the economy. We are aware that the weight of the SMEs is larger in Spain than in the whole of the European Union. Of the 2.9 companies, according to the Social Security data that were in Spain at the end of 2020, only 0.16% are large companies, and only 0.99% have more than 50 employees. Therefore, almost the full company weaving of Spain is SMEs, of which 55%, more than 50%, 5% have no employees, and almost 94% have less than 10 employees. Those are added important segment of self-employed, which represent 18% of the companies in Spain, and also have the same characteristics, features of micro companies. This important weight of SMEs, and particularly of micro SMEs, produce specific problems in Spain. The plan we sent to Brussels creates the facilitation of the creation of companies, their growth, their restructuring, and to back the function of the internal market in Spain, to increase productivity by digitalization and innovation, also internationalization. All of this integrated in an ecosystem configured by strategic frameworks and agendas and national plans and international plans that we are aware chase the same aim. I have read very interesting, with much interest, your framework document in which you state your program principles and structural reforms. And I could find that you are well aligned with the ecosystem in the need of redefining collectively a model of growth, a growth model that must be intelligent, inclusive, and sustainable. also to find a legal framework that is closer and more favorable to SMEs and self-employed, particularly to the areas of tax, finance, and payment terms, all attached to the 4 engines of transformation that, as you know, ecologic, digital, gender, and social and territorial cohesion. A transformation in which your members, I'm sure, will have much to do. I only want to thank you all, your invitation to participate today in this meeting, and I encourage you to keep your commitment to bettering SMEs and self-employed in our country. I believe that at this historic time, nobody must be missing. We need all hands, and I know very well that transformation and will go much further if we add the companies that you are representing here. Thank you very much, and good luck.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias.
Thank you, Vice President. It's 1 o'clock. I remind you that you can follow this through YouTube, and if you want to comment it in the networks, we are using several hashtags, CONPYMES or CONPYMES is born, and you can use it to comment all that we are seeing here. We go ahead, and I will give the floor to the Vice President of CONPYMES and President of EPIMEC, Anthony Cañete.
Muy bien.
Good morning. First, I want to thank you and say hello to all the various members and representatives of all the political branches of the country represented in the Congress. I want to thank the Minister Valeriano, the delegate of the government of Catalonia, and many authorities that are present here today, and all the associations, federations, confederations, and areas that are here in the presentation of the National Confederation of SMEs and Self-Employed in this country. I would like to start by thanking the possibility of making this presentation to explain that today is a very special day. It's a very special day because 40 years ago, democracy came to this country, and there's an area where really the game is playing, I swear, and it's in the financial and company area. In our company, our country has an anomaly in the representation of that such an important area, which is the financial and company area, because 99.8% of that weave is not represented, has no voice, is not notorious, is not considered, and therefore it's an anomaly that today, with the presentation of the National Confederation of SMEs, we place on the table the possibility of giving voice to that, such an important part of our economy, that, which is a motor, an engine of the economy. What we are proposing with CONPYMES is not against anyone. It's favoring all, as we have said before, because that representation of 99.8%, 70% of employment and over 60% of the gross domestic product is an anomaly that has no voice. And our country needs, after so many years of democracy and the transition, that we may become, our map of companies become equal to that of Europe and the other countries of Europe. All countries in Europe have an organization of large companies and another for SMEs, which are separate. MEDEV in France, and ACENA, and Confederation of Small SMEs in France, or Confindustria in Italy and CENA in Italy, or in Europe, has Business Europe for the large companies, and separately, SM United for SMEs. In our country, we still have, or we fare a vertical representation, where almost, when in the same organization, and I give it as an example, you have El Corte Inglés and the corner store, the decisions will be taken that may have interest for the corner store. So, without going against, but with a clear will of giving voice to that engine of our economy, CONPYMES wants to represent, defend, and present the problems that have, as I said before, the engine of our economy. Also, I would like maybe to do some self-criticism, because in a call, when we say to the companies of the self-employed that they must participate in organizations that represent them, because otherwise others will take our space, and it's an anomaly that we have had, maybe because of inaction of having that participation. Our voice has not been heard. In many cases, it has been used for other interests, I would say, and sometimes even against our own interests. In that sense, and beyond what may happen that we are just given headlines, data always tell us what are the consequences of this situation of representation and defense of the engine of our economy. I will give you data. The average workers in our companies is 6 in Spain, where in Germany it's 14, England 11, or even some countries as Denmark, which are 13 workers. Why our companies are smaller than those of the countries surround us? Not because we are different. We have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and we are practically the same. When that happens, it's because there is a cause and an effect. And this cause effect, we have many public headlines that tell us SMEs must grow. We must make our SMEs grow. But we always stay on the headline, and in saying so, what we are proposing now is that we must go where decisions are taken to explain what must happen so that we keep a growth. We have a problem, we have a clear problem of dimension. And the problem of dimension is due to the decisions taken in the law and with the interests of a few, in many cases, against many. I will give you some examples so we can see what are the problems and the reason for them. We have a tax inversely proportional to the size of the companies, when we know that tax is an element of justice and competitivity like no other. When the smaller you are, the higher tax burden you have does not need any comment. In regard to energy, one of the elements of competitivity in a country, when we get the aggregate data of energy, but when you're representing, analyzing the SMEs, what you see is that when you segregate them, our SMEs pay the megawatt almost twice as some countries around us. In the SME segments, our energy is 20 or 30% more expensive than in Portugal or in France. We could give some other examples of how discrimination happens in this sense, and that will be public purchases. Another one of the large examples, there is no company more important in our country or group or multinational that has the capacity to purchase larger than the administrations, 180,000 million euros, 18% of the GDP. Europe marks that SMEs should have a coverage, a participation of 60%. They're the same as their contribution to GDP. In Spain, we are under 20%. In fact, 19%. That must be, something must be happening. Then we could also talk of the payment areas and other in which dominant positions or actions or legislative actions that only benefit the few against the 4 or more million companies. A few days ago, I explained, so that you have it as an example, Europe has created a mechanism to buy debt of large corporations and listed companies. And in the situation that we have lived in the pandemic, we wrote to some organizations a letter to the president of the European Central Bank saying that they should also help SMEs. The president, Madame Lagarde, replied and said the purchase of those were done so that the large companies could translate commercially and financially to the small and medium enterprise. We analyzed the data of the Spanish stock exchange, in which listed companies had 15% liquidity, and we found that in 2020, through the purchase of debt, they have increased it to 25% liquidity. We found how this translation was happening in payments, and we found that listed companies are getting their money in 63 days, which is what the European law, and they are paying more than 193 days, over 3 times the average of payment time in the Spanish law and the European law. But also, that is not only a surprise. There is a value of 80,000 million euros of invoices above those legal payment terms. So when it tells that our SMEs must grow and be more competitive, that we can generate more wealth and better quality of employment, what we find is that if our SMEs have to pay energy more expensive, have higher fiscality, more discriminatory, and also they don't access public purchases, and we are paid 193 days, it's a miracle that we have SMEs and self-employed. Our president has said that our aim is to have a more inclusive capitalism. What we're trying to do is to propose a more circular capitalism in which these prices can be shaped to make the country more competitive, but our aims are, I want to make clear in CONPYMES what we are offering. We are trying company activism, participation of the representative world and association world to defend their interests. And we are making that call. Secondly, we want to place SMEs and self-employed in the breach, in the steering wheel, where participation and defense is. We cannot expect fair laws to create wealth and better labor if we don't have the steering wheel. And something you will hear from us, and I thank the presence of the several representatives of the politicians represented in the Congress. We want the political parties to make laws thinking in small to be able to make this country larger, bigger. If we don't legislate and think in the small, we will never be able to grow. And that will condition our present and particularly our future. I want to finish with an expression that the presentation we make today of CONPYMES in the financial and company area and for SMEs and self-employed is not a final point, but mainly, maybe, it is the best starting point. So thank you very much. We are here to add up, to represent, and to defend something so as important as our present and our future. Thank you.
Bueno, pues lo hemos escuchado. CONPYMES nace con ese propósito de que las pequeñas y medianas empresas y también los autónomos cuenten con...
So we are born to create a voice for representation in Spain and the European Union. SMEs are 99.8% of the companies in our country. The Vice President of CONPYMES of Huataí has the floor. Good morning, dear Valeriano. Thank you for being with us, representative of the political parties, the members of parliament, friends. I was saying hello to all. I will make a quick speech, but I will do it truly because my colleagues have said so, but I will try not to bore you. Yesterday, thinking a bit of what to say, I remembered that an economist from Italy, I think called Schumacher, I believe him, I remember him for the Formula One pilot, said, alerted of the danger of the global economy, the impersonal, and he was a disciple of Keynes, and that was not considered, it was not particularly heard. We had a chance to find that it happened. We can see precarious employment, difference between the biggest and the smallest, the difficulties of so many, particularly of the labor and the workers, and we believe that maybe we have to recover the value of the small. And we are here for that. I represent the smallest of the smallest. I'm not a capitalist. The people I represent are not trying to get more profit. All we want is a labor. But we feel together with SMEs that want to have the balance between capital and labor be more positive for all in time and to contribute to overcome these gaps and inequalities that make a less happy society than it should. So we have got into this project, which is a group that is very plural. We are people representing all territories of the Spanish state, all the sectors of activity, all the fields of activity, production, all together in the same common aim. And we want to occupy a space that we believe is not occupied, which is the spaces of talking and decision. We be to present our point of view, because particularly at this time when we have a wounded society and we try to get away from it, we have to recover certain values. I am convinced, and I hope that you will agree, that we are not going to be able to do a feminist transition without us, without the female self-employed. We will not be able to do ecological transition or digital transition or all the scenarios of modernization of knowledge and training without us. And we are here to do that sincerely, with open arms and firmly. We must remember so many years that we live in a social and democratic state. We must remember that democracy is not exercised only every 4 years with our vote. It is with the participation of civil society organized, and that is done getting together, raising our voice, and requesting the spaces of participation and representation, which is the essence of democracy. Wonderful word, but sometimes it's not easy to pronounce when we are talking of a democratic effect, and I'm finishing now, opening our arms and remembering so many other small organizations of neighborhoods, towns, and I'm sure that all together we'll be able to better this society. Thank you.
Por eso, damos las gracias.
That is why we want to thank CONPYMES to give us this representation at the state level. That's what we have received the news, the creation of CONPYMES, as a very positive news, because we believe that we will have visibility, much higher visibility at the state level. We will get muscle and fight for aims that are common so that we can be heard, SMEs can be heard. The main thing is to have a voice and that they listen to us and give us solutions. And that's why we receive this news as a very positive thing for, I am Hispano-Moroccan and the first deputy member of parliament, the Catalonian parliament. And I want to defend the usefulness of this company to help the relationship with the North African country. I'm happy that this act will be done in the Arab House. Shukran. Thank you. At this time of hope that things what we most need, the small SMEs and self-employed, the security for our work. Labor is prosperity. Employment is prosperity in all fields of life. So we must get together to help the country and use the European reactivation plan to be able to contribute to financial reactivation. Self-employed and SMEs are the main engine of the economy of our country. The project of CONPYMES is a young and advanced project, and we want to defend our space. Employers require a real representation, and my sector is important to make more green and responsible our area. And here, SMEs are important. We are more sustainable and create more added value for society. CONPYMES is an organization of SMEs for SMEs. We need to have direct voice, solvent and active of CONPYMES to transmit truly the relevance of SMEs in the economy and to help the representation of SMEs. I wish you the best in this. I have international transport of refrigerated goods. I want to say to all SMEs and self-employed that the survival of our work will depend on our union. The same as the French or German transport sector, when they want something, they usually get it. Our union is our strength. We cannot compete with the 10, 15 or 20 large companies with large fleets in the price of taxes, tunnels or fuel, but we can work so that such small prices that they not get so low and that they don't dominate all the warehouses, and we have to ask them work or trips. The drivers, self-employed drivers, have a name and a family. In the large companies, they're just numbers without name. Let's fight together to not be absorbed by them, and let's become another number. Greetings.
Bueno,
So let's go on. CONPYMES, as you know, is made up of 24 employee organizations, 30 organizations of SMEs and self-employed. Some representatives of such organizations and members of CONPYMES are here with us, and I will ask all of them to be very brief in their speech because there's many of them, and now we start to have short time. Here is Miguel Blanco, Secretary General of COAG, the Confederation of Agriculturists and Farmers. Good morning to all. Yes, we are very limited in time. I will read the 4 notes I have here. The act today is particularly relevant. We believe from COAG that there will be a transition for the representation of SMEs and self-employed people in our country. A transition because of this presentation of CONPYMES. The idea, and that's key, and that's why we are part of CONPYMES, to represent and defend a model of social and professional economy that, as the data have been presented here, and very true, creates the largest part of wealth and employment in Spain. And yet, it's more threatened all the time. We believe there's a space of representation, which has been commented here in the press conference. There's a clear area of representation that CONPYMES legitimately occupies, and we believe it's an open space for dialogue. That's our will, the will to reach agreements and dialogue from a plural model and independent model, as plural and independent are COAG and the other organizations comprising CONPYMES. As professionals of agriculture and farming, we are recognized as an essential sector, yes. We are now, and we must say so, in a very hard process of reconversion, which is aggravated in a very intense way by the pandemic and the consequences and the financial consequences derived from the pandemic. A process of reconversion that may ruin the agrarian model that is a majority in Spain and which we represent, is replacing it by what? But it's true. Agriculture without farmers, only one data. 7% of the owners of farmers, which are large companies, already controls 45% of the value of the agricultural production in this country. The new model created by oligopolistic and large funds is doing what COAG has a process of, and that dynamic is favored by the free trade treaties that favor competition. We were talking loyal competition. No, they favor disloyal competition because they don't establish the fair equivalence of goods that come from laws in regulation and quality and security and food security, animal welfare and environmental commitment. This process that we are denouncing risk no less than the sustainability of our agroalimentary system. But not only it is the farmers section, but all productive sectors are suffering this, and this causes the loss of the weave of the economy, of social economy in the society. I hope that CONPYMES will be recognized in the area of public dialogue, allowing us at this time to cooperate in the development of recovery funds that must be prior to social economy, SMEs and self-employed in our country, because their strategic character must be considered a question of the state. Thank you.
Muchísimas
Thank you. I insist on short times because we have little time. I will now give the floor to the Secretary General of, and I ask the next ones to be ready so we can advance. And these are all the people that are going to make their presentation so that we'll go up and make the speeches to save a few minutes. Colleagues, friends, authorities, I will try to be as short as possible. I thank the opportunity of speaking from the SMEs of Menorca, which proves the compromise of CONPYMES with the smallest of the smallest. From Menorca, from the Balearics, we see that the entities that made up this project are very far away, but we are very, very concerned. We have been able to integrate our aims, integrating territories and collectives. Nobody like us that have the double and triple insularity can see how far administration is for SMEs. Even the smallest of employers must not fear the bureaucratic hurdles and be able to find opportunities for all. We know perfectly well the tourist companies, which are mostly SMEs and self-employed, and they urgently need to restart their activity to keep afloat and to balance the accounts of our country. It has been proved that in a situation of pandemic, the local companies and small companies that in 2020 have maintained touristic destinations open. Let's allow touristic rent to be democratized with new agents and stopping hurdles for new figures. Our labor for representations of these people is to influence the decisions that affect us with conscientious and solidarity of the principles that we defend in CONPYMES as expressed by our President. And there is where we must ask the national and regional public powers. They must trust CONPYMES to build a more solid and solidary economy and more our companies are small, but there are many, and they need a space to grow. Thank you. Good morning. In this, you know what is the instrument used by large companies to dominate the sectors in oligopolies? It's us. Our loneliness has been the instrument, the more powerful instruments of these large companies. Let's stop being sorry. Let's find solutions of present and future with equal opportunities. 65,000 families invest in photovoltaic energies. We have been very badly treated. A business that's only 4 companies. Can you imagine the media and political attacks that we have had to withstand? We were able to get together in a large association called Ampere. We had to use our large photovoltaic parks. We have managed that the politicians are aware of the damage they cost us, and they have adapted. In 10 years of fight, we have fought large contaminating corporations with influence in politics, the media, and the legislation. That requires effort, fight, movement, and chase utopic situations, fights that are happening in other sectors. We will only win by adding efforts in a company that is multi-sectorial and rigorous in solidarity, defending the common cause and fights to better SMEs, and that's why we're here. That's the answer. CONPYMES is the answer. Good morning all. President, Vice President, authorities and colleagues. I speak of the Federation of Executive and Professional Women. We want to transmit our commitment to be a part of this ambitious project that we are presenting today, CONPYME. This initiative, coming from the need of chasing the productive weave, is very important for women employers because 42% of SMEs are created or managed by women. CONPYMES is a fight for the SMEs from the unity of those that even in the hard times we are running, we are still fighting, and we assume the responsibility of helping save thousands of small businesses and go into a more modern, sustainable area. We have got together to share our concerns and also to find solutions. We need direct helps, conciliation policies, lines of finance, and help plans of help to female employers to find viability in our business. We are sure that only putting together our force we will be able to solve the challenges. Thank you. Dear friends, authorities, good morning. As president of CES, the Confederation of Employers in Salamanca and Castilla y León, I'm very proud of the birth of CONPYMES, which is an historic opportunity for the companies of our country. It's a historic opportunity for the companies in our country. In Castilla y León, our town, there are 3,000 companies that had to close in the last year. Gross domestic product went down 20%, and the clock has gone down in financial terms to 2016. Particularly schools and hospitality are very, but one is, the worst is the proximity trade, a primordial muscle in creation of wealth and employment, because the main street small shops are a main part of our economy, of the dynamics of our towns and cities is basic due to the importance and recognition to give them. So we are asking urgent rescue plans for trade, for small trade, to alleviate the consequences. We have many challenges ahead of us. I'm sure we will manage them. We should do it together with institutions and the political branches, in which we ask their help. Thank you. CONPYMES is for all, the ship that will take us in the steering wheel. Good morning. In Spain, the public purchases are 18% of GDP, and in that field, CONPYMES also has a clear objective to defend inclusive capitalism, in which we must reach a market economy, social and inclusive, based on equal opportunities, competition among companies, and fair price creation. We do it on the three axes: defense of the interest of the SMEs, the betterment of public hiring so that SMEs have the opportunities they deserve, and to facilitate access by notification by territories or by size or sectors, so that they can increase concurrence and participation. Public hiring has large deficiencies in competition and efficiency. Also, we have found, among many other, the lack of transparency, where the contracting goes against the law in quality and price, and so it should all be changed to give the balance that SMEs deserve. So it's very important to an urgent modification of Law 9 of public hiring, which came from the European Directive of 2014. For CONPYMES, it's very important, the independent office of regulation of contracting. It must have structures and means to do its job properly. For CONPYMES, it is impossible to have an increase in minimum pay if the law does not adjust contracts. The law of decentralization has not disappeared, and we don't have a clear form of changing the price of contracts. But it's not possible that shares are become empty and prices have to be renewal of contracts just from the part of the hire without agreement with the contractor. There can be social clauses in the legislation is not social. For example, for auctions or timetables that make impossible conciliation. Law 15 exists, there is a law, and yet payment times is not respected. And I could keep telling a long list of problems that harm SMEs. From CONPYMES, we have decided to defend the legitimate interests of SMEs in public hiring against the public administrations and to press political parties to present an initiative, a basic initiative in reforming the Law 9 of public hiring. Good morning, all. I had two things to say, and I will say the shortest one. I cannot avoid, and it's wonderful for me and for my organization, FENADISMER, the Federation of Associations of Transport of Companies, Transport Companies. It's a part of CONPYMES, this wonderful project and long-awaited project in which I am happy to be the honorary president with my colleague, until a few days ago, president of FENADISMER. FENADISMER was born formally in 1977, right after a law was approved that allowed the creation of associations and labor unions in Spain. But long before, in the dictatorship, there was no freedom of association, but only a single organization to which we had to be added compulsorily, which is called a vertical syndicate, a vertical labor union. Hundreds of small and medium transport professionals already worked clandestinely to have our own organization in the sector to represent us really. What gave rise to FENADISMER. We have never been in any organization with a vertical organization. We got together in such a way, never again this will happen. It's better to be alone in the desert than that someone else decide for us in their interest. And we have remained like this a long time, 40 years. It's a long time. I'm sorry that I have seen the same fight process to constitute an organization at a national level to actually collect and independently all the SMEs of the different sectors in the economy of this country. Today is a great day. Some have reasons to enjoy it particularly because of that long road that we have suffered to reach this point. But at the end, we are here. We can see many colleagues, and I think this will help at the end to prove that we are able to defend ourselves. Thank you. I've been told that Alma Mayer, president of SM United, I will give the floor now so that he can greet us. Good morning all, it's a great pleasure to be with you. The problem, of course, is that we are fighting problems, larger problems, and this has come from the SM United barometer a month ago. And of course, at European level, we have made a great thing, the recovery plan, which reaches 700,000 million euros. And the good part is that a tenth of it can reach Spain. And the Spanish government has made a plan called Spain Can, which makes us think of what a American president said, yes, we can. And what's important is that a decisive part of this money reach the SMEs in Spain and help them do the double transition of environment and financial. And so our message, which is very short, is what the British say when they attribute it to the French. When there is a will, there is a way. And therefore, SMEs represent the future of all Europe. Thank you. Muchas gracias. We are coming to the end of this presentation of CONPYMES. I invite to take the floor Begoña Gómez, Alberto Barreiro, and Emilio Aranz, of the Professor of Competition at the University of Madrid, technical on the social impact as an opportunity. First, I want to thank all the attendants and all the persons, the speakers before me, that have given lots of energy and emotions in their words. I want to congratulate CONPYMES and Antonio Cañete and José Roca for this opportunity for all SMEs that get together in this employee association that gets together 2.1 million SMEs. It's an employee association which is spread throughout the Spanish territory, getting together logistics, transport, tourism, farming, agriculture, energy, all that we're always talking about, these clean energies. The different sectors are all within this organization. We are here in this meeting because if we want something to happen in this country, if we want something to be transformed, it's no doubt it must go through the SMEs. SMEs are almost 99% of the company weave of Spain. And we're talking about the market. Today it must be sustainable, and sustainable market at the end of the day must be seconded by the demands of international demand, investor demand, consumer demand, which are asking companies to integrate within their business social impact and ecological impact, because the capacity that SMEs have is the capacity of transformation through our products and through our services. Therefore, sustainability stops being a need to become a reason of being of the organizations to accomplish this positive social impact and to help to us to grow and to survive. When we are more sustainable, we are longer lived, and we have a longer future to our own market. SMEs are the place where social weaves are developed and a social and cultural process is based, where the people are based day to day, in a sustainable business model that we want to present today is a model that will allow the companies that are rethinking their business strategies and how they want, after all these months that we have been having the pandemic, to incorporate something new to their strategies. And what better than to incorporate a social and ecological strategy to your business. To take care of SMEs is to take care of society. If we take care of society, we take care of the SMEs. That's a fundamental pair. And in this employee association, it's very relevant. So all these words that we are saying of social impact, ecological impact, sustainability, may appear to be utopic, but it's not so. The university has a basic job to advance processes to companies. So from the chair that I represent, we have created a process that's competitive social transformation, to teach companies how to put together the company, the business, with the aim of the company. That aim that gives us a competitive advantage that will make us different from the market and will allow us to become international. When we are going to European or American markets, what they ask us is that our companies be backed in 3 basic pillars, which are economic, social, and governance pillars. And we were find our competitive advantage. There are 17 principles. We must find what is that in which in innovation we can back our companies. We can ally with others for that development of innovation that can reach us to a scale economy, or reaching a larger production, a proximity production. SMEs require that consumption be proximity consumption. And all these months that we have been living the pandemic, we have seen how the consumer requires these proximity products. And of course, if there is a competitive advantage, we have a financial return. We can do it well, and we can do good. And doing it well and doing good, incorporating our structures in our strategy, we find several benefits. We have cost savings when we apply this. We have new ecosystems to which we can wake up when we incorporate social impact. We can diversify our services and explore new ecosystems. We can access better public contracts, adapt better to new regulations, be longer living in our business, and discover new financial resources. And these next generation funds that some of our friends have been talking about, which are funds on 4 lines: transformation of ecology, digital transformation, territorial cohesion, and social and equality, or gender equality. We have much to say in SMEs. They must act in this, and they must receive these funds. I would like my colleague Alberto Barreiro to come here from Transformation Studio, which was a cooperator in the Master of Digital Transformation, to explain some of this process. And then another one of my colleagues, which is CRIAS, an investment fund for SMEs, will explain how these investments are possible within SMEs when we are incorporating competitive social transformation. Thank you for inviting us in participating in this conference. As Begoña said, somehow social transformation, social impact is intrinsic to the quality of the companies that are members of our economy. You are 90% of that, of our ecosystem, of our financial ecosystem. So it's basic that from SMEs we lead and work together, and I myself, I am a self-employed, I'm an SME too. We must be able, from our little impact, from our size, small size, local and particular sectors, to generate these waves of change and this positive effect around us. So I will get my teacher hat and I will explain a couple of reflections of thoughts to start this process of transformation that we are fighting for. I understand that at this time of crisis, of pandemic, affecting people like us, it will be difficult and quixotic to speak about social transformation, environment, but it's basic to do so, because if we were trapped in the day-to-day, trying to survive as best as possible, the world's still moving. And in that moving world, the demands of people change, and our partners change, and institutions change, and we have to adapt. So we must learn, even if it's difficult, to swim and keep the clothes, to keep our responsibility with the future, to see how we can still be relevant in the future. So in the end, the master that we do and the way we work with companies is, the only thing we do is to try to solve a simple question: how keep being relevant in the future world, how to keep being relevant in the future. What is the relationship we want to establish with the world around us, and what kind of legacy we want to leave after us. And the answer to this question, there's a way we have of work, which is the first exercise we do, the first block of our answer is to ask ourselves, what kind of impact, how does our environment and our clients change in our context, small or large, in sociology and ecology, when we do well our work. This reflection that we're going to do today on our daily job is the principle of all that comes afterwards. To the answer to this question, we ask the aim, which is to define our value proposal, who we are as an organization, and what is the positive impact we have in others. This reflection, which I invite you to do now, ask ourselves, how do people change around us when we do our job right? Doing this reflection, when we incorporate this reflection in our way of doing is when we start to change, when we start to understand the impact, and we try to focus on optimizing and perfecting the impact that we may have. This is what adds us to the other, that we're doing our job right in a recurring way, we end up having a social impact in innovation, in the economic area around us. At the end, we end having an impact. That's the only trick we need to start to think in a transforming way. But again, this is what makes us relevant, allows us to understand widely our business, and the competitive advantage that they produce are very many, and I want to leave my colleague to tell us the impact that thinking in this way has. Good morning, almost good afternoon. I know we are just, I'll try to be very, very short. Ronald Cohen, who is one of the fathers of the private investment in SMEs at European level, said the impact is a revolution, and it's a revolution because it's a change of paradigm. Many years ago, at the beginning of the 20th century, investment was taken against profitability. After the crisis of 2012, they were taken and based, many, we still do it, based on risk and profits. And towards the new world we are going to, decisions of investment will have to be taken based on risk, profits, and impact. And this is a change of paradigm, it's to change the status quo. And funds like CREAS is what we do, my fund. And the impact is a change of paradigm, and it's come to stay. The second message is investors are part of the solution. We are an ally, partner of the SME. We provide capital and experience to companies that are proposing solutions, innovative and scalable, to specific in the European and Spanish level. And trying to go together, we present our aid, which is capital, talent, and experience. We have told today that the impact we are doing, we can see from a reactive point of view as a movement against the movements of regulations, clients, consumers, and markets, which compel us to make decisions, but also from a proactive point of view, allowing us to get into new possibilities, new chances, new products, new markets, new clients, to perfect our system and get better margins in our creation of value, and also as an element to be able to capture and retain talent, and certainly to make a better balance of risks and operational risks that we all face in all companies. And the last message, new paradigm. Private investors are part of the solution. We are allies. We give value, and profitability and impact can be together. The fourth is that you're not alone. We are creating in Spain and Europe a great ecosystem of investors, institutions, and great large companies, consultants. We are trying to fight that not only investment, but the economy advance to a larger economy. And that's a common place, which is this place where we're all converging to see how we can all get together to a more sustainable, responsible, and fair economy. And in this common home, you're all invited. So it will be a pleasure to be contacting with all of you, and thank you all.
Bueno, pues
It's a few minutes after 2 o'clock. Let's finish this, and we do it with Josep González de Sala, President, the Honored President of CONPYMES.
Bueno, distinguidas autoridades.
Dear authorities and representatives of the political parties, President and friends and partners of CONPYMES, ladies and gentlemen, good morning all. I want to thank our colleague in Europe that we were not sure at the last minute that he would be able to come in through the internet, and we had him with us. Some time ago, I stopped being the president of PYMEC, the Catalan Association of SMEs, after 30 years. 30 years of strong growth of our entity, 30 years of consolidating the largest patronal representativity in Spain, 30 years of satisfactions and pride of being able to serve our members, but also 30 years of finding a missing real representation at a national level of SMEs. All these years of experience on defending SMEs, we found lacking this wider representative at the level of all Spain. Today, after these 30 years, undoubtedly it's a great satisfaction to see the birth of CONPYMES as a historic day for the defense of our companies. Approximately 3 years ago, I will repeat some of the things that have been said, but it means that we all prepared what we should, and we have not made agreements among ourselves. 3 years ago, the platform of SMEs was created among several different associations which had common interests, PYMEC, Fenedismer, and so on. And I will not cite them all because there are many. In 3 years, we have growth very much in members, but also we have reaffirmed our will and the good agreement among us. And I give it much more value because we came from very different sectors throughout the country and also very different views, and yet this common denominator is working for the same cause as united us. Finally, we have agreed in transforming this platform into an employers association, and today we are still agree. An employers association trying to work for this group which needs help more than ever today. CONPYMES is born without conditions to limit its representative capacity, which I think we all value, all members value. There are other companies that represent in the country. It will be good to cooperate among all, but it will only be possible if we agree in the full freedom without limitation of interest, of competing interests in the matters to defend. For example, as was said, the matter of defending on lack of payment or the better access to public contracting, matters where the will of the large and the administration, the companies, is in doubt. And here we are worried, and there can be another difficulty, the apparent impossibility of the legislative power to decide on the establishment of a way to go against on late payment. This is a feeling that the members of CONPYMES have, and the strength and the conviction that unites us to fight these problems. We must be together to face these problems. Union is strength, never better said. We hope this unity will become enlarged to other associations of SMEs. We also assume the agreement of being an exemplary organization in order to act in the defense of their members. Plural in thought, but we must empower SMEs and self-employed. 99.8% has been said often is SMEs, and like in most countries, the only difference is the size of our SMEs, but not the percentage of SMEs. In Spain, we have very many micro companies, and that's a point that we should call attention to. We would need government policies, specifically fiscal, labor, financial, to make the size of our SMEs grow. This global word, size, matters. And also, we have confirmed this in PMEC because we have made studies. We have thought about the size of companies. It was said, why do they have to grow? There are SMEs that are very profitable, yes, but it's proved, and the studies prove it, that this size is important at the time of managing and obtaining results. And so globally, we cannot have any doubt that the largest, the better for our SMEs. And specific policies adequate to make our SMEs grow should be maybe at 5 or 10 years time. I think that would be important to send it as a message that there should be specific policies for that. If we had time, we would see that along the years, the policies in Spain are fighting the SMEs, and I can fill up the details to feel that, but it's not the time now. The European funds will be another test to see whether they are channeled to the largest part of our productive, which is the SMEs. The large companies have projects, of course, but they have their own capacity to finance them. We don't see the right ones to receive the largest part of these funds. 70% of the gross domestic product are generated by SMEs, and the European funds should go to that sector. And I said large companies have their own funds because, among other things, they take care of not paying in time SMEs, and therefore they have sufficient funds. Now we are seeing the control of the pandemic, hopefully. It's an excellent news. Let's hope it will consolidate. But now is the time to cure the wounds of our SMEs and our self-employed. We must not make mistakes in the therapy. As I said, today is a great day, a very important day today. With the constitution and presentation of CONPYMES, we reach an old dream. I hope it will be long-lived, and I hope it will be a reason for the pride of all our members. I am grateful for the recognition I have been given. Thanks for all for being here. And as I'm the last to speak, I can call the end of this act. And thank you all. Well, thank you to all for having been with us here. It's already 2:10 past. Thank to all of you who are in the Arab House and all those that are seeing us through streaming. I only want to say that take care and take very much good care.